What if I told you that one of the most formidable queens in European history, a woman who forged a nation, bankrolled the discovery of a new world, and built a global empire, made a vow so revolting it threatened to unleash pestilence upon her own kingdom? Today, we're delving into a bizarre myth that surrounds Isabella I of Castile. Imagine a medieval Iberia, a patchwork of warring kingdoms where Christians, Muslims, and Jews coexisted in a delicate, often volatile, balance. It was a far cry from the uniformly Catholic nation we might envision. Contrary to popular caricatures, medieval people were not entirely oblivious to cleanliness. They recognized that foul odors could signify disease, but their understanding of health was based on the theory of humors, which posited that health depended on a balance of bodily fluids. Excessive bathing was thought to open the pores to bad air, making one susceptible to illness. Linen undergarments were a luxury. Most people owned only a few sets. Even royalty might go for extended periods without changing, especially on military campaigns. This context makes Isabella's purported vow both more conceivable and more astounding. 10 years, not 10 days or weeks, but a decade in the same undergarments, while actively campaigning in the sweltering heat of southern Spain. Even in an era of different hygienic standards, this would have been extreme. For nearly 8 centuries, since the Muslim conquest of 711, Christian kingdoms had been engaged in a struggle to reclaim territory in what they termed the Reconquista, the reconquest. By Isabella's time, this had evolved into a holy war, a crusade to purify Spain of what was deemed foreign influence. The last bastion of Muslim power was the Emirate of Granada, a dazzling center of Islamic civilization in the mountains of southern Spain. Its palaces were legendary, its scholars renowned. But to Isabella and Ferdinand, it represented an affront to Christian dominance that had to be extinguished. The Nasrid dynasty, which ruled Granada, had survived for centuries through shrewd diplomacy and fierce resistance. Conquering Granada would demand more than just military might. It would require an obsessive, unyielding commitment. This was the world that shaped Isabella. Her father, John II of Castile, presided over a realm rife with aristocratic rebellion. Her half-brother, Henry IV, was so ineffectual he earned the moniker Henry the Impotent. From her earliest years, Isabella learned a harsh lesson. Power is not simply inherited, it is seized. At the tender age of 6, she was thrust into a civil war over the line of succession. Her own legitimacy was questioned, and powerful nobles sought to marry her off to foreign princes to neutralize her claim. But Isabella had her own ambitions. In 1469, at 18, she made a move that would alter the destiny of Spain. She secretly wed Ferdinand of Aragon, uniting the two most powerful Christian kingdoms on the peninsula. This was no fairy tale romance. It was a strategic masterstroke. Together, Isabella and Ferdinand commanded the resources to finally dominate the Iberian Peninsula. Their ambition, however, transcended mere conquest. They envisioned una España, one Spain, united under a single crown and a single faith. This audacious goal would necessitate a radical act, the complete eradication of Muslim political power from Iberia. A legend that, while almost certainly false, uncovers fascinating truths about medieval power, religious fanaticism, and the very nature of historical narrative. Let us be clear from the outset. The story of Isabella's decade-long underwear vow is most likely a fabrication, a piece of propaganda crafted to amplify her religious zeal. But this is the story of that myth's genesis, its spread across a continent, and what it reveals about a monarch who genuinely did unite a fractured land, conclude a nearly 800-year holy war, and finance the voyage that irrevocably altered the course of human history. Our saga begins in 1451, with the birth of Isabella of Castile. This was not merely a royal birth. It was the arrival of a woman who would reshape the known world and, as legend has it, refused to change her clothes for a significant portion of a decade. Isabella I of Castile, a name synonymous with power and piety, is also the subject of a legend that would make her undergarments infamous. But is this tale of royal unhygiene merely a fabricated piece of historical slander? Or did the celebrated Queen of Spain truly refuse to change her undergarments for the better part of a decade, nearly causing a catastrophic plague? I'm your host, and this is Dark Ages Historian. where we excavate the most shocking and obscure tales from the annals of history. But before we get to the infamous undergarments, we must understand the woman and the world that forged her. To comprehend the shocking nature of Isabella's supposed vow, we must understand the context of medieval Spain. To grasp the full impact of Isabella's alleged vow, we need to address medieval hygiene. This brings us to 1482 and the Siege of Granada, the final Muslim stronghold in Spain. The stakes were the completion of the Reconquista and the unification of a Catholic Spain. Granada was a formidable fortress, having repelled attacks for centuries. The Spanish Inquisition, established by Isabella and Ferdinand in 1478, was already active. Its purpose was to enforce Catholic orthodoxy, and its methods were brutal. The last Muslim ruler, Boabdil, surrendered the keys to the city to Isabella and Ferdinand. 8 centuries of Muslim political presence in Spain came to an end. According to witnesses, Isabella wept. And according to the legend, she finally changed her underwear. The garments were said to have been so foul they were burned rather than washed. But while this story of personal hygiene, or lack thereof, was making the rounds, Isabella was also making history. The end of the Reconquista freed up resources and national focus for a new, world-altering venture. Just months after Granada's fall, she made the momentous decision to fund the voyage of an Italian navigator named Christopher Columbus, who promised a new route to the Indies by sailing west. Conversos, Jews who had converted to Christianity, were a primary target, relentlessly investigated, tortured, and executed on suspicion of secretly practicing their ancestral faith. The same religious fervor that supposedly inspired Isabella's unhygienic vow manifested in increasingly brutal public spectacles known as autos de fe, where heretics were burned alive. The irony is stark. While allegedly creating a personal biohazard, she was systematically cleansing Spain of its religious diversity. Her commitment to purity was both absurdly personal and terrifyingly political. As the walls of Granada began to crumble, Isabella was already planning the next phase of her purification campaign, one that would impact hundreds of thousands of lives. Taking it would require a display of divine favor to inspire their troops. It is here that the myth of Isabella's vow takes center stage. Chroniclers writing decades later claim she swore an oath before God and her army not to change her undergarments until Granada fell. The story alleges a dramatic ceremony where she knelt before her confessor, hand on a holy relic, and declared, "As Christ suffered for our sins, so shall I suffer this small discomfort until his enemies are vanquished." The siege of Granada would drag on for nearly a decade. While the tale of Isabella's increasingly foul undergarments is almost certainly a later invention, her military leadership during the Granada War was very real and brilliant. She didn't just besiege Granada. She systematically conquered every surrounding stronghold, tightening a noose around the last Muslim kingdom. She established permanent military camps, created sophisticated supply lines, and pioneered new siege warfare techniques. Contemporary accounts describe a queen who personally oversaw siege engines and lived for extended periods in military encampments, even pawning her own jewels to finance the war. She established field hospitals and managed diplomatic relations with other European powers, all while, according to the legend, remaining in the same unwashed undergarments. As her reputation as a formidable commander grew, so too did the mythical stench of her legendary vow. But beneath the surface of this military campaign, a more sinister operation was underway. On January 2, 1492, after a grueling 10-year war, the gates of Granada finally opened. But did any of this really happen? The earliest accounts of Isabella's vow appear in chronicles written long after her death. Contemporary sources from the Granada campaign make no mention of it. It's likely what historians call a pious fiction, a story invented to highlight her religious devotion. The story is almost certainly false, but it reveals a deeper truth about her and her era. Whether she made the vow or not, Isabella of Castile was a woman of immense determination and troubling fanaticism. She unified Spain, funded the discovery of the Americas, and established a global empire. She also unleashed some of history's most systematic campaigns of religious persecution. The underwear story persists because it encapsulates the stark contradictions of her reign, the blend of public grandeur and private piety, of immense achievement and immense cruelty. Isabella's legacy is a complex and contested one. Is she the heroic unifier of Spain or a religious extremist responsible for untold suffering? The answer likely depends on where your ancestors stood in the world she created. What do you think? Was this a real vow or medieval fake news? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this exploration of royal hygiene and historical complexity, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more from Dark Ages Historian. Until next time, keep questioning the past. Because whether or not Isabella changed her underwear, she undeniably changed the world, and we are still living with the consequences. While the idea of not changing undergarments for an extended period might seem shocking today, it wouldn't have been as outrageous in the 15th century, though a decade would have been extreme even by medieval standards. Whether true or not, the story served a purpose. It transformed Isabella into a symbol of unwavering piety, conveniently overshadowing the darker aspects of her reign. The tale spread throughout Europe, with Protestant nations using it to mock Catholic superstition and Catholic nations celebrating it as a testament to holy dedication. The story also evolved over time. Early versions focused on her religious devotion, while later accounts emphasized the supposed health hazards and the near plague at her court. The underwear became a metaphor for everything from royal excess to religious fanaticism. But while we've been focused on this bizarre myth, we must not forget the real and devastating consequences of Isabella's policies. The completion of the Reconquista was immediately followed by the Alhambra Decree in 1492, which ordered the expulsion of all Jews from Spain. Hundreds of thousands were forced to flee, abandoning their homes and possessions. Those who converted faced the constant threat of the Inquisition. Muslims also faced brutal persecution, with forced conversions and the burning of Arabic books. The rich, multicultural fabric of medieval Spain was systematically destroyed, and the consequences for the Americas were equally catastrophic. The same religious zeal that fueled the Reconquista was used to justify the brutal conquest of indigenous civilizations. Millions died from disease, warfare, and exploitation. All of this was achieved by a queen who, if the legend is to be believed, refused to change her underwear for a decade. So what is the truth behind Isabella's infamous undergarments?